dum diddy do, yum diddy dum diddy da da, ya da 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 do, yum diddy dum diddy da da, yum diddy dum diddy do, yum diddy dum diddy da da, ya da 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 do, yum diddy dum diddy da da da, yum diddy dum diddy da do, yum diddy dum diddy da da da, ya da 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 do, yum diddy dum diddy da da da, yum diddy dum diddy da do, yum diddy dum diddy da da da, ya da 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 do, yum diddy dum diddy da da, yum diddy dum diddy do, yum diddy dum diddy da da, ya da 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 do, yum diddy dum diddy da da, yum diddy dum diddy do, yum diddy dum diddy da da, ya da 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 do, yum diddy dum diddy da da da, yum diddy dum diddy dee da do, yum diddy dum diddy da da da, ya da 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 do, yum diddy dum diddy da da da, yum diddy dum diddy dee da do, yum diddy dum diddy da da da, ya da 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 do.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm going to begin with a poem called The Sabbath Prayer by one of my favorite poets, Ruth Bren. Holy Presence, help us now to make this new Shabbat. After noise, we seek quiet. After crowds, maybe not so many crowds, but any of us who have been in crowds, after crowds of strangers, we seek to touch those we love. After concentration on work and responsibility, we seek freedom to meditate, to listen to our inward selves. We open our eyes to the hidden beauties and the infinite possibilities in the world you are creating. We break open the gates of the reservoirs of goodness and kindness in ourselves and in others. We reach toward one holy, perfect moment of Shabbat. So in reaching for this holy moment, I know we aren't all together, but I invite you to say Shabbat Shalom in the chat so we know that you're there. Introduce yourself if you want to.
Good job, Miss Ruben.
If you want to share something about yourself, we can see all the chat, so we'd love to know who's watching. So take a moment, as you might during services, to say Shabbat Shalom to those sitting near you. Say Shabbat Shalom to those who are with us.
Shabbat Shalom.
In the Zoomerverse, in the void. I don't know.
Shabbat Shalom, Autumn.
Yes.
Shabbat Shalom, Leslie.
And Judy. And Toby. And Sean. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So we make our way into what is the warm-up for Shabbat, Kabbalat Shabbat. It's really our time to let go of this past week. Shabbat Shalom, Steve. Let go of this past week and move into that holy, perfect moment of Shabbat.
None of my buttons are working.
Uh-oh.
Let's try one more time. You got another poem for us?
Sure. I have a meditation. Hang on. Let me grab it. Okay, so this is a meditation for Shabbat evening as we prepare ourselves for Shabbat by Dr. Yvette Nan-Catlin. We are here together as one. One people, one community. We've joined to share in this treasured moment together as we transition from the hectic demands of life and daily routines. We are invited to leave the week behind, to let go of what has been, to let go of what will be, and enter a place of stillness, a sacred space and time. So as the sun is setting, we breathe in the glow of sunset and pause. And we breathe out the stresses of the week. We breathe in the calm of nightfall. And we pause. And we breathe out and feel a sense of release. We breathe in the radiance of the moon and the stars. And we pause. And we breathe out all thoughts of doing. And become one with this present moment. Feel the warmth of relaxation watch over us. We breathe in the radiant light. And pause. As we feel our mind become open and unfettered, and we breathe out and feel your soul become free to soar to new heights. We breathe in the calm, and we pause. We feel ourselves surrender, and we breathe out everything and focus only on now. As we feel our whole body, our mind, and our soul become whole and at peace.
Looks like none of our words are working. The service we use, singular, is not working. I don't know, Autumn, if you can do any magic in the background.
It's okay. You can find
we'll be good.
the CDOR. It's adoreform.org, and you can follow along. You can download it or open it up on a browser. It's totally free. Just go to centralreform.org, and all the words will be there.
So we bring in Shabbos with light. We bring in Shabbos by bringing in more light. Leslie, it feels more like Shabbos having you here. It always does. It always does. So if you would light these candles, bring in some light, send out some light, sending out love. I don't know about everyone else. It's been that kind of week for me. It's been a heavy week. Ready for Shabbos. Ready for Shabbos. Yeah. Rabbi Susan always talks about the schmutz that we let go of on Shabbos. And my addendum is that you can always let go of the schmutz because you know with confidence it will be waiting for you when Shabbos is over.
Plus new schmutz.
Plus new schmutz. But right, like, there's something true to this. Right, like how many folks have been so overworked during the pandemic and overexhausted during the pandemic, and right, like, mental health, right? Yeah. Like, I know that's been our experience, that it's just right. It's always there. It's hard to separate, and it's hard to carry all of this. Mm-hmm. So I think it's why we need Shabbos. It's why we need Shabbos. It's why maybe we need like 6 months of Shabbos, actually. But yes. So Leslie, if you'd light our candles and send some Shabbos out to us.
Oh, Karen, what you said hit the spot. Take light in. Spread it around. My God, there's a lot of broken places to send light to this week. Sending it out to you guys. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshon b'mitzvotav v'tzivonu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat v'tzivonu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Leslie.
I feel it. I really do. Leslie, hearing your voice, I can exhale a little bit. Thank you. We love you.
Love you.
We love you. So we continue welcoming the Sabbath presence in our midst. Traditionally, we would rise at the last verse of Lecha Dodi to greet the Sabbath bride, the Sabbath presence. So we invite you to take a moment, take a breath, finish letting go of that schmutz as we move more into Kabbalat Shabbat with Lecha Dodi. It is on page 8 in the CRC Siddur.
top of page 9. Hitoreri in the middle of page 9. Hitoreri kiva orech kumi ori. Good Shabbos, Suzanne. Suzanne, excuse me. Shir Daberi Kavod Adonai Alayich Nigla Ulecha Dodi Likas Kala B'nei Shabbat Nikabela Olecha Dodi Likras Kala B'nei Shabbat Nikabela. Great Shabbos as it comes in. Shalom Ateret Bala Gam B'Simcha U'Tzola Toch Emunei Am Segula
So we make our way out of Kabbalat Shabbat. I hope you had a moment, or maybe more than one moment, of just letting go and of feeling that Shabbat peace. We move into the Shema and its blessings, which is on page 10. And this is sort of the beginning of understanding how we're supposed to pray. So this reminds us that we need a community, that we can't do this alone, that we must have others, whether they're in person or whether we can just feel them through our screens. We know that they're there, and we know that we all have each other. So we're actually on page 11. So we call each other to prayer with the words of the Baruch Hu. interpretation of Ma'ariv Aravim, our blessing over the evening. A wind arrived from you one evening by the sea, caught a cloud and breathed it toward the sun, whose cooling warmth drew it pink and orange, purple, yellow, gold upon the strands. And waves your sea wind had whipped white, caught the gold, laughed up the yellow, till waves and clouds, bright sea, bright sky, rode together, a tide of clouds come in, a tide gone out, to welcome evening sun, like mystic surging toward Shabbat, its colors melting in the tide.
Evening, the frayed edges of our lives, Ma'ariv Aravim, Amen. Evening, the frayed edges of our lives, Ma'ariv So we take a minute for Shema. I always say the Shema is so poorly translated. We translate this word Adonai, Yud He Vav He, as Lord, right? And so many of us, if we grew up going to Jewish Shabbat schools, Jewish Sunday schools, learned Shema is "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is God."
The Lord is one.
But the word Lord isn't actually in there, right? I'm kind of reactive to that word.
I don't like that word either, actually.
Yeah.
I feel very reactive towards that word, like lording over you.
Yeah, and it's right, like it's just the image that it's not at all how I conceive of the divine. The word Yud He Vav He is an impossible form of the verb to be, the verb of existence. It means what was, what is, and what will be all at once. Reb Zalman Schechter Shlomi of a blessed memory, really Rabbi Randy's Rebbe, I think it's fair to say, the founder of Renewal Judaism. One of his Rebbes, yeah. Along with Bono and Bob Marley.
And Waskow,
yeah.
And Bono and Bob Marley. And you too. Oh yeah, Bono, you too, yeah, sorry.
But Reb Zalman Schechter Shlomi says, he pulls this from the Zohar, where it says that every blade of grass has an angel urging it to grow, whispering in the angel's ear, saying, grow, grow. And that everything, every one of us, has that same angel whispering in our ear, grow, grow. But we have angels of the collective too. That just as a blade of grass has its angel, its essence, its other half, it's however we want to think of it, what makes it, so does a field of grass have that. There's something about that field, something that is, that the same is true as us as a collective. That there's an angel calling upon all humanity, grow, grow. And that if we back away far enough, we get an angel of all of creation. Somehow, just like the field of grass is made up of the blades, but somehow not greater, but different than its parts, different than just its sum. there also is that sum of all of it, the sum totality of creation. And this Zalman says, is what we mean by Yud He Vav He, that which was, that which is, and that which will be. And so Shema is not listen, Israel, the Lord is God, the Lord is one. But listen, Israel, that which is, that which was, and that which will be. That's what we mean by this word Eloheinu. That's what we mean by this word God. And that which was, that which is, and that which will be is in the end, is fundamentally one. So I invite everyone, if you feel comfortable wherever you are, to cover your eyes, to somehow feel more connected as we see less. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
We continue on page 16 with the words of the Ve'ahavta.
V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha ugshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafo b'neinecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha. And the Ve'ahavta ends with a reminder of Egypt, because the rabbis say, well, they don't use this word, but if they knew it, I think they would have said that there's danger in becoming too bougie, right? There's danger.
Bougie?
It's a classic Talmudic. The rabbis of the Talmud wish they knew bougie.
They do.
They do now, right? They're up in the yeshiva shel Male,
Listening.
Yeah,
Wondering what the heck you're talking about.
It's actually what the rabbis do in yeshiva shel Male. They stream services.
Yeah. These days,
yeah. But right, it is the rabbis. They don't have this word, but they wish they would have had this word, because it's why we have this reminder of Egypt. It's why we have this reminder of having been a people enslaved. Because when you get too comfortable, right? When you get too comfortable, your prayers become too much about yourself. It's one of the great ironies, right? That there's something about the experience of needing that causes empathy with those who also need. There's something about the experience of having suffered that causes empathy with those who are suffering, and yet there is the danger in being too bougie. Right? Deuteronomy talks about this. Right? Deuteronomy talks immediately about what happens when you go into the land and you get too comfortable, when it is too easy for you. How dare you forget what happened to you, and how dare you allow it to happen to anyone else? And so we have this reminder at the end of Ve'ahavta of being an enslaved people in Egypt. Leman tizkeru vasitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim le'Elohechem Ahani Adonai Elohechem אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם, אמת.
I'm not going to look at that the same way after hearing that about bougie. Is Hashkivenu. And we don't always think of these two as connected, but they actually are very connected. In the Talmud, it talks about how these are connected, and it says that instead of seeing Hashkivenu as a pause, we should see it as an extension of the Michamocha. And moving into the Amidah, into the words Adonai Sifatai Tivtach Ufiyagi Tehilatecha. So what's the connection? They say that the connection is that when the plagues were sent upon Egypt, that there was great fear among all the people. There was darkness, and there were frogs, and you know, the waters turned to blood, and this caused a great fear for the people who were there at this time. And so they prayed. They prayed on the final plague that the angel of death would not come to their home and inflict death upon them or upon their loved ones. And so the rabbis teach Hashkivenu as a reminder of that fear that the Israelites faced during the time of redemption. And it's also a reminder of the fears that we face at night, because night can be a scary time. It's dark and it can be lonely. And so we connected with this moment of redemption, this moment of freedom, that although there might be darkness and although there might be plagues, hopefully we will still find the light and find our way out and be protected by the words of Hashkivenu. So we are on page 20, if you want to follow along.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom Hamidenu Somreinu lechaim Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom Hamidenu Somreinu lechaim Allow shalom. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom. Amidenu Shomreinu leChaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom. Hamidenu Shomreinu leChaim. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright now. Everything's gonna be alright. Frosalenu Sukkah, Sukkah Shlomecha. Frosalenu Sukkah Shlomecha. Cover over us tonight with a Sukkah Shalom, a shelter of peace. Those you love, Sukkah Shalom over all creation. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom. V'hamidenu Shomreinu leChaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom. Hamidenu Shomreinu leChaim. One day, one day, one day, one day, one day, one day.
So before we make our way into Tefillah, into the Amidah, we have a special Shabbat verses song. I don't even know what to call this, but Vishamru. This is really the part of the service that reminds us that it's Shabbat. That we could have an evening service with so many of these prayers and so much of this, but it's Vishamru specifically that says it is not any other night. It is Shabbat, and it should be special, and it should be celebrated. So the words for Vishamru are on page 21.
Actually,
I think it just started working.
hold on.
Maybe.
The words for Vishamru might.
Nope.
No.
Oh!
Yeah, there we go.
Woo woo! I don't know what happened, but it's that Shabbat miracle.
I always think of Vishamru as the toilet paper prayer.
Gosh.
I'm on a roll today. Bougie toilet paper prayer, you know. No, I do. I think of it as the toilet paper prayer. Here's why. I promise.
Oh, okay.
I promise it makes sense. I promise it makes sense.
We're waiting.
It's traditional. It's traditional on Shabbos, or in the traditional world. One of those rules, I should say. One of the traditional rules of Shabbos, and the one that I think when a lot of people find out about it, it's the most absurd one. Like, oh my God, really? When Reformed Jews find out about this.
But it happens.
Is that you don't tear toilet paper on Shabbat. But I want to dig into this for a second, because I actually think there's something profound here, because the idea is that even something as small, as mundane, as tearing a piece of toilet paper, right? That level of change is a level of change that we should avoid in the world. Or I should say, that level of mastery. And mastery really, in some of the negative ways that I think we associate that word, that level of mastery over creation, over the world, that level of control, even down to the tearing of something like toilet paper, that this should be a day apart from that. that there's something that happens to us. We change on all the other 6 days, when on this day, we step back. On this day, we see ourselves not as controllers of creation, but as those who are along for the ride. The hope is that if we do this, somehow we are different. And if we are different, somehow the world is different. Shabbat, la hasoret ha-Shabbat, lidor tamperitola, v'shamru v'nei Yisrael, et ha-Shabbat, la hasoret ha-Shabbat, lidor tamperitola. Vein b'nei Yisrael, oti le'olam, v'shamru b'nei Yisrael, et ha-Shabbat, la'asor et ha-Shabbat, lidorotam berit olam. Ki sheshes yamim asar Adonai et hashamayim va'et ha'aretz, v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asor et ha-Shabbat, lidorotam berit olam. V'ayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asor et ha-Shabbat, lidorotam berit olam, lidorotam berit olam. Lidorotam berit olam.
In the words of Leslie, you're on a roll.
Leslie, I don't know if you remember. I don't know what it says that Leslie and Karen are texting behind the. Yeah.
You gotta be in touch with the other service leaders.
Leslie, I don't know if you remember. So you and I have been leading services together for over 20 years. That's crazy, by the way, right? But I have such a memory of filling in for Rabbi Ed when he wasn't Rabbi Ed, but Cantor Ed on a Shabbat service. I was probably 18 years old. It was probably 20 years ago exactly. And we got to Vishamru and realized that neither of us knew how to sing the verses. That's what Ed always did. I don't know if you remember. I have such a vivid memory. Yeah. All of a sudden doing Vishamru. So anyways, it is a special thing to be leading services with you, to be with you on Shabbos.
Yeah.
I learned the word.
And I'm glad we both have learned the
words.
Yeah.
And now we will always think of it as the toilet paper prayer. I hope we can let go of these giggles to enter into tefillah, although it is nice to laugh and smile. So I hope you're laughing and smiling along with us. We are on page 23, although we now have the words up here, so you no longer have to follow along in the Siddur if you don't want to. We make our way into the Amidah, into our time for prayer. This is really our time to check in with ourselves, to connect with our inner selves, to see where we're at, to see what we might need to put out into the world. Whatever that is, it's probably different for each of us, but this is our time to do that, to center ourselves, and to think about ways we can change our world and things we need the world to give us in return to make us better people and to make us healthier people. So So we join together in the words of Adonai Sefatay Tiftach Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. We will do one more communal prayer after that, and then we will have some time for silence or time for you to think about all those things that maybe you haven't had time to think about during the week.
I think that was beautiful. No, I mean it. That was. I really liked how you talked about prayer. The idea of what we need from the world in return. I don't know. I never thought of prayer that way. It's beautiful. Adonai, Sifatai Tiftah, Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha, Havaya, Sifatai Tiftah, Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha, Adonai, be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true, with thanksgiving. I'll be a living sanctuary for you, Adonai, Sifatai Tiftah, Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha, Adonai, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true, with thanksgiving. I'll be a living sanctuary for you. Yeah, da, 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 yeah. Yeah, da, 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 yeah, yeah. Yeah, da, 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 yeah, 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 da, da. Yeah, da, 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 da. Yeah, da, 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 da. Yeah, da, 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 yeah, yeah. Yeah, da, 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 yeah, 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 da, da, yeah, yeah, yeah. Adonai, Sifatai Tiftah, Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Bilha, Elohei Zilpah, Ha'il Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Konei Shamayim va'aretz. And so we take a moment for the personal prayers of our heart, the Avodah Shabbat Lev, as Leslie sings us words of peace.
Imrefi
Amen.
Amen. Little Torah?
A little Torah. A little Torah. I feel like I need a moment, though, to let that sink in, Leslie. Thank you. So, we have Tazria Mitzorah this week.
It's a favorite.
It's a B'nai Mitzvah favorite. No, it's actually my the memory I always think of in Tazria Mitzorah is there's a little conservative shul just outside of Jerusalem and remote. I have beloved family members that I would stay with in my year in Israel in rabbinical school who lived in Remote, which is this suburb of Jerusalem. I guess that's what you'd call it.
Like a very ultra-Orthodox suburb, I would say, right?
Not anymore. Or it didn't used to be. It has since become much more Orthodox
Yeah.
and Haredi in particular, ultra-Orthodox. But there was this really sweet conservative shul. And so I would sleep
We
at
loved
my...
it.
We loved it there, yeah. And it was Helen's shul, remember, from HUC? Yeah.
We had an Aliyah there on our wedding.
Yeah, I forgot.
Right after our
I
wedding.
forgot. But anyways, I have such a vivid memory. Right, it's a conservative shul, but as my dad said when he visited Israel, even in the Reform shuls, they speak Hebrew here. Right? Yeah. But it was a conservative shul, mostly meaning that it was a very traditional service, but egalitarian.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were up doing the Torah reading during Tazria Mitzorah, and a lot of these folks are Anglos, as they're called there, or American expats living in Israel, Oles in Israel. And I'll never forget the Gabbai, the person who was correcting the Torah reading on the side. After the Torah reader finished, he looks over and he very quietly, though quiet enough for us all to hear in the room, said, "Mazel tov, you're now a board-certified dermatologist."
It's true, though. If you look at what's in this Torah portion, it is so appropriate because it's all about like oozing things and bloody things and all the things
Skin
that make
lesions.
B'nai Mitzvah kids uncomfortable. Except Lillian, I have to say, last Shabbat, she had this Torah portion. She wants to be an infectious disease, and she was.
She wants to be an infectious disease doctor.
Doctor.
Very different than being an infectious disease. Yeah.
And she rocked it, and she was so excited to get this Torah portion, and she was into it. Like, she wanted to talk about leprosy.
It's like
and
Rabbi
all the
Susan
things.
says, you get the right Torah portion, right?
She was awesome.
And she read this, by the way, but she was afternoon on Shabbat.
Yeah, she was Shabbat
Bat
afternoon.
Mitzvah, which is always next week's Torah portion.
Yeah.
So the same Torah portion we
But
read now.
she loved it.
But I don't know. I've been thinking about that board-certified dermatologist line, and I've been thinking about Tazria Mitzorah because these are all these laws about when you have these skin lesions or when you have public health issues or personal health issues that can impact the public.
Or when you just have bodily things that you need to take care of. Because it also talks about mothers after childbirth.
Yeah.
And so there's that sort of like not like oozing things, but things that are like come out of your body, I think is really one of the things that connects everything.
Yes, that's definitely the connector here. Yeah. But I was specifically talking about Mitzorah, this like traditionally translated as leprosy, though even the translations that translated as leprosy all have a note that say this is not the same thing as leprosy. But some sort of supernatural skin lesion, but it's a lesion that can go on your skin or on your home also.
It can go on your home.
But what really stood out to me are the rules that exist around public health in this Torah portion, right? The rules are all about how do we stop this from spreading? And what are the obligations that fall upon the individual in order to prevent
the spread of
disease.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, I think, stood out to me how different the conversation around public health in Israel is around COVID. I mean, first of all, Israel has socialized medicine, like purely socialized medicine as a Jewish value, to be clear, right? Like that is a Jewish value of communal health. But Israel also, for instance, pretty uncontroversially has vaccine passports. places you can only get into if you can prove that you're a fully vaccinated individual. In the difference between that and, for instance, our discourse here in Missouri, where the focus has been on, well, first of all, our legislature is passing a law that you can't have vaccine passports. But beyond that, where the focus has been so much on individual freedom, right? And how mask mandates or public health mandates or these things limit individual freedom. And in Israel, it's the exact opposite. And I would suggest that
Yeah, I know, Leslie. I'm
right?
with you. I saw your face and I totally agree with you.
But in our Torah portion, I think it's the opposite too, in the sense that the questions around public health are about what are the obligations of the individual to the community and to protect the community, not what are the freedoms that the individual has, right? And ultimately, these public health measures in the Torah or in Israel, or hopefully in our country, end up being about how do we create safe spaces where people can gather together, right? That is the fundamental goal, that the spaces themselves be safe so that the individuals can enter. And it's such a different concept. And I really appreciate how much work our committee here at CRC, our not public health committee, our COVID task force, that's what we call them, has put in. First of all, we have a task force that's made up of doctors, that's made up of public health experts, of public health ethicists, of, right, like we have a wide variety of perspectives on this. But they've consistently, over and over again, reinforced the idea that if we are going to be in person, or let's change that, when we are in person again, that it has to be done in a way that preserves a safe and healthy public space so that individuals can enter into it. I'm going to give this away. Don't tell anyone. But we have our very first in-person CRC event. Outdoors, socially distanced, limit of 25 people there,
23.
Right? 23 because the rabbis count, right?
Yeah.
No, well, we count as people.
I know, that's what I said.
23 other people.
No,
23 other people is what I meant.
But right, like the baby toe dipping in, but we have our first in-person event since Purim of last year. That's going to be on the book. So look out for an email with the sign up. If you haven't seen it yet, it will not be the last in-person event, I promise.
It will be the first.
It'll be the first. It'll still be streamed on Lag BaOmer. But there has been... Sarah Evergreen just wrote in the chat, sorry, rabbis are people, which is why we lost it here.
No, we're not people.
But it means so much, right? Even in the places where we might disagree with the way that the COVID task force at CRC is interpreting, or the limit of the number of people, or any of these things, right? We know that what they are prioritizing is a public space that is safe for individuals to enter in. And I don't know what could be a more Jewish value than that.
Yeah, from this week's Torah portion,
From this week's Torah portion. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Leslie, you want to jump in with anything?
I'm cool.
No?
Cool.
Good.
Okay, I have a totally separate Torah thought. Pretend that I have a totally different idea, but pretend that we didn't just give that teaching. It's gone. It's gone. Wipe it out of your minds. Yes.
Don't wipe it out of your mind. Just move on.
Okay. I don't know what we ate today. Like
It's you.
Maybe it's just me. Yeah.
It's
And
me.
Leslie.
It's Leslie's bad influence. Yeah.
It
yeah.
is.
But Mitzora, this leprosy, right? This skin disease. What could be less applicable in terms of like tachlis public health, right? To most of us these days, the idea of reading all this about leprosy, right? Sort of going back to why the B'nai Mitzvah students are not always Lillian accepted, amazing Lillian accepted, why they're not always so excited about this. And so the rabbis themselves take this and they dig in and they totally transform Mitzora. It stops being about skin lesions. It stops even really for them being about public health. And instead they teach that Mitzora, this leprosy, comes about as a result of Lashon Hara, of
Evil speech.
Evil speech. Right? And
that is also true of your house. That's why they say you can have leprosy on your house and it doesn't just affect people, because it's really about how you treat people.
See, yeah, I like that. I like
I
that.
wrote a whole sermon about that once.
Um, so there is this radical transformation of leprosy into Lashon Hara, but the Lashon Hara idea I find is much, it's different than what we mean by, how do we usually translate it in English? As,
Evil
Gossip.
yeah, yeah. Gossip. That was the word. Thank
Gossip.
you.
Thanks, Leslie.
Thanks, Leslie. Yeah, we usually translate it as gossip, but actually it's different than gossip. Because in order for it to be Lashon Hara, it has to be true. That if it's a lie, right? Like if it's made up gossip, it's not actually Lashon Hara. And I think we so often think of that as being gossip, right? Like telling stories that are not true about someone maliciously. And that's not the idea at all. I mean, that's also frowned upon in Judaism, but that's a different category. That instead, Lashon Hara are the stories we know about people that are in fact true and that we tell because they're really good stories. Right? Like, Leslie, I've got some really good stories for you. And so the Lashon Hara actually becomes something internal, right? It's not about the person whose story we are telling. It's about that impulse to bond with others by putting someone else down, right? Which I think is a human impulse, right? I mean, you can see it in first grade and you can see it in the CCAR Rabbis Forum on Facebook, right? Like the impulse to bond with others by putting a third party down. And that is the idea of Lashon Hara. It's not about gossip that's made up. It's about something inside of us that we have to work on. So that's the other sort of classic thing that the rabbinic tradition does with Mitzorah.
And he does it a few times in the Torah.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the Miriam thing, right?
They say that's why Miriam got leprosy, because she was talking badly about Moses' wife. So, yeah, because Moses' wife was a Cushite woman, and they say Miriam was talking badly about her, and so she was afflicted with leprosy. Lashon Hara.
Huh.
So it happens multiple times that they equate these lesions, this disease with bad, evil speech, and that's why it's on your house too. Because if you're doing it in your house, you're creating that environment.
In particular, I had never thought of it this way, but in particular, and I'm just thinking about how much energy and discourse and dollars have gone in the American Jewish community over the last 50 years, fighting interfaith marriage, right?
Yeah.
But
I know.
But hold on, I had never thought of this. Miriam is punished for trash talking interfaith marriage.
Oh,
right?
You're right.
Moses marries a Cushite woman, and Miriam speaks badly about it,
and gets leprosy.
And is cured from it. Also, we should hold on to that.
She is cured from it.
She's cured from it when she does tshuva.
Yeah.
When she recognizes that it's not about her intention, it's about the impact. Right? And that's where tshuva begins, of course. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Tell the story about the rabbi on the pillow.
Tell it, Leslie.
Man goes to the rabbi because he needs the rabbi, and he's been talking trash about the rabbi. And he says, "I'm really sorry, and now I need your help. Will you help me?"
So this is a story about how you should never trash talk about a rabbi. It's also a very important Jewish value. Yes.
If you're going to trash talk the rabbi, do it somewhere else. Make sure the rabbi doesn't find out. So the rabbi says to him, "If you need me, of course I'll be there for you." He says, as an act of repentance, here, take this pillow outside, this feather pillow with this knife, and cut it open and scatter all the feathers to the wind. And when you've gathered them all together, come back to me. And the man looks at the rabbi and says, "How can I do that? They'll be everywhere." And the rabbi says to him, "That's what happens to your words."
You're so right. And they also illustrate that with toothpaste. We do it with kids. Because if you have a kid squeeze out the whole tube of toothpaste and then you tell them to put it back in, you can't. Once it's out, it's out.
I like that.
Once it's out, it's out.
You're so right. Thanks for adding that, Leslie. That's a great illustration of this.
So, speaking of healing, healing of Miriam, healing of our world, we take a moment from Misha Berach L'Cholim for a prayer of healing for those who need it. Refuah Shlema is what we say, a complete healing, a healing of wholeness is really what it means, right? And I think wholeness is different than a complete healing. We can always pray for a healing of wholeness. Healing of completeness is a little different. So we pray for Refuat HaNefesh, a healing of our spirits, a Refuat HaGuf, a healing of our bodies. And in a moment, Leslie's going to sing us Debbie Friedman of A Blessed Memories, Misha Berach. But first, we'll share some names. We'll share the names of those people we're thinking of. So if you're thinking of someone, we invite you to share it in the chat. And
we'll add them after the list.
We will add them after the list.
So we send healing prayers to Rick Hack, Gail Rock, Evan Richards, Carrie Schulman, Susan Schroeder, Ron Fagerstrom, Debbie Zurinsky, Dr. Richard Byrnes, Julie Stevenson, Toby Schreiber, Everly Ray Bierman, Corinne Char and Baby Mendel, Meredith Berkowitz, Gail Hollifield, Tom Fox, Michael Davenport, Sherry Hugler O'Donnell, otherwise known as Cher DeLune, W. Hadding Carter III, Roshan Batman, Kay Wolpert, Bob Cohn, Lewis Kidder, Rhonda Banford, Andy Neiman, Tom Collinger, Zach Collinger, Judy Markey, Dr. Powers, Choco Guniva, Ann Rudy, John and Karen DeGuire, Gerald Chervitz, Anita Stiffelman, Judy Medoff, Lev Reynolds, Mark Benkendorf, Jean Isserman, Kathy Davenport, Linda Rikus, Alex Hochberg, Michelle Long, Judy Underhill, Stacy Abelis, Alan Snyder, Janice Marks, Charlie Moss, Faye Cohn, Sandy and Pam Cohn, Maya Gila Bat Rivka Yocheved, who is the daughter of Becky and Nelson Zool, Eileen Ehrlich, Dick Hart, Tayana Keys, Steve Littlejohn, Sarah Monfort, Suzanne Cooperman Gill, Shirley Potisha, Annette Sklar, Karen Teitelbaum, Carl W. and David F., Maureen and Mary, Sherry, Rabbi Barry Altmark, and Sue C.
And Andy Neiman. Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Rochat Adonai, Rofeh HaCholim. Blessed is the source of life that calls us to be the healers in this world.
Amen.
So we begin to end our service. We begin to conclude our service with words of Aleinu, words that speak to the way that the world should be, a vision of a world redeemed. And God knows we live in a world yet to be redeemed. I love that phrase. It's a classic Jewish phrase, right? In our world that is yet to be redeemed. A reminder that there's always more work for us to do. So we remember that with the words of Aleinu, which literally means it is upon us. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latekedu la leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot hadama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, וגור עלינו כחוהמונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים, הוא אלוהינו, אין עוד מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום להשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת, אין עוד. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
At the very end of our service, we take a moment to remember those who are no longer with us. This was written by Merit Malloy and it's titled Epitaph. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother or sister walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live on in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, by letting bodies touch bodies, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die. People do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. If you'd like to share names of people you're remembering, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'm going to begin with our congregational list. We remember Shirley Sewell, Gil Nussbaum, Fran Hyman. We remember Virginia LaRocca and Mary Ellen Mem Mavshen. Remember Shirley Gerchen. We remember Morton Wechsler, Lizzie Pressberg, Louis Myers, Melp Dower, Jerry Berger, Jack Oglander, Robert Fauser, Eleanor Flegel, Ann Alter, Estelle Tootsie Esrock, Peter Fishman, Erwin Pollock, Carl Wiley, Ann Fetterman, Emily Engelhart, Connie Wacker, Alvin Nissenbaum, Tammy Kevrickheim, Marcio Pollock, Bernard Tobin, Gary Rikus, Joan Klein, Michael Kiernan, Father Robert Johnston, and Orietta Cohn. We also remember George Minkovich and Ryan Steele. We join together in the words of the Mourner's Kaddish.
Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma, Divrach, Rute, V'yamlich, Malchute, B'chayechon, Uvyomechon, Uvchaye D'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala Uvizman Kariv, V'imru. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Le'olam U'lomei Almaya. Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitalev, V'yitalal, Shemei D'Kudisha, B'richu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechamata, Damiran be'alma, V'imru. Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba min Shemaya, V'chaim, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, V'imru. Amen. Aseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru. Amen.
Oh, say shalom bimromav, huya, say shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, amen.
Thank you, Leslie.
Zichronam Livracha, may the memories of all of those that we miss, all of those that we mourn, be a source of blessing, be a source of strength, and be a source of love in our lives.
Amen. So just a few announcements. Please make sure you're following us on social media and are on our e-newsletter list. You can subscribe on our website. We are in the midst right now of a listening campaign. So you may have seen this in some of your emails, but we would like to hear about each other's passions, gifts, and what speaks to our communal heart as we prepare to launch the Ashrei Foundation. This foundation will be a not-for-profit alongside our congregation, which will help us deepen our social justice work and move it Ashrei, move it forward. There are more details in your email, but you can register for a listening session if you'd like. Havdalah, there's a new time for Havdalah because luckily we have sunlight later. So Havdalah will be at 8 o'clock at night with Rabbi Susan and Jim. We are continuing to count the Omer, the days between Passover and Shavuot, which we'll do in just a moment. And Rabbi Susan and Jim are counting those every day but Shabbat at 9:30 in the morning. This Sunday, we have an awesome program I'm super excited about. It's called Lech Lechala, and we'll be crafting challah into Torah. It's with Rabbi Vanessa, who's a rabbinical student in New York, and it's going to be really, really fun. So it's on Zoom. You can look in our website or our announcements for details. It's 11:30 on Sunday. We have a university series this month with lots of guest teachers. Feel free to join us this Tuesday. Will be Rabbi Zach Fredman, and he will join.
Who also grew up at CRC.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
You didn't know Zach grew up here?
join Rabbi Jem to discuss music and mysticism.
Zach and I were in a high school band together for all of one show.
Okay. And then just save the dates. The Lag BaOmer campfire that Daniel was talking about is on April 29th, and it will start at 8 o'clock in the evening. We have In Our Midst coming up in a few weeks. And one more thing just to put in your ear, we have, I think about 3 weeks, maybe a month, but Shavuot is coming up in a month. This is our all-night study. We're very excited to partner with Reformed congregations in St. Louis to provide all-night study for all of you. So just know that that's coming up, and you'll see more about that soon. And then we still have No Shanda, No Shame on Sundays and Inner Judaism with Rabbi Jem on Wednesdays. So we have a lot going on. You can always check our website for anything and everything that I may have missed. And Shabbat Shalom.
Speaking of Rabbi Jem, this is one of his Adon alums. I say one of his because he's written at least 2 really great ones. Adon olam Hashem alach b'terem kol yitzir nivra li nasa b'chesako az hamelech shemo nikra Yairei ביום מקרא בידו אפקיד רוחי והייתי שם ויעירה ועם רוחי כביעתי אדוני לי ולא יירא יעירה
So we end services by counting the Omer. Some of you, I know some of you have gotten this workbook that I absolutely have loved. So if you have it, send me a message. And I'd love to get together with anyone who has it to talk about it. But today is day 20. And the theme for today is bonding, grounding, and covenant, along with truth, balance, and harmony. And so our mindfulness for today is make note of times you create distance or separation between you and another person, and times you create connection between you and another person. What do you notice about your tendencies? And so we say the Omer blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat ha'omer.
Today is day 20, which is 2 weeks and 6 days of the Omer.
היום 20 יום שהם 2 שבועות ו6 ימים לעומר.
And you can get this workbook online. This is how I got it. I don't know how fast you'll get it, but we have a ways to go with the Omer, so there should be time. It's called, you can see it, the Omer Workbook, a 49-day self-care immersion. And every day has different themes and connections. It's really, really beautifully made. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
And let's end by giving each other a blessing.
Thank you, Leslie.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha.
May you be blessed, and may you be watched over, and may you be kept safe.
Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka.
May you laugh.
May you
Amen.
laugh. Amen.
Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. And most of all, wherever we go, wherever life takes us, the places we want to go, the places we don't want to go, but we still got to go, may we carry with us peace.
Amen.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, Leslie.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom, Karen.
So.